light in this world to anchor a little bit more of heaven on earth. And as we do that, we can say that when you see me, you see the presence that sent me. For this presence and I and all of us are one. And for this and so much more, we're grateful and thankful. And we say so in the name and the nature of the Spirit of God. Amen.
Amen.
And any birthdays this month?
July birthdays.
If you would stand, we can acknowledge you.
Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. It's all for you. Happy birthday. And you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to ya. Behold. Behold. Yes, it is a new format. You may not have noticed because you're all so familiar, but just take a moment. Look at our new format. I want to tell you we are going to be at least 200 sheets of paper less per week. So we are going greener. Same great content.
Moving toward paperless completely.
We are.
Yes. Wow, Wednesday?
And I just stole your announcement.
That's all right.
Because it
Continue
felt
on.
natural.
Continue on.
So this week, our Wow Wednesday program is a guided drumming circle, and it's a great vibration with Dominic Garcia. Bring your own drums. We have a few to share. And just in case you want a more contemplative experience than that really deep vibration, Reverend Deborah will facilitate a really interesting spiritual discussion in the chapel. So you can have both. You can come and join the vibration, or you can be in a little bit more peaceful experience. And every Wednesday, our beautiful prayer chaplains offer a healing circle after the Wednesday service. Don't miss that. They so love loving you, and it's a great way to get your aura smoothed.
And we have coming up our Guys with Guitars, a Mystic Cafe, and for a few words to give you an update on that, we have RJ.
RJ.
Hi, everyone. Hey, I'm here to encourage all of us to buy our tickets to Guys with Guitars. It's on Friday, July 21st. And we have sold about 75% of the house. We're in very good shape. So we are encouraged. There it is. See, look, we have a lot of sold out tables. As you can see, there's only about 3 or 4 tables left. So I am strongly recommending that in an easy and relaxed manner, in a healthy and positive way, in its own perfect time, we will be sold out, and we will have sold 100 tickets. Are you going to Guys with Guitars? Parsley on Tom Christman's orders. Remember tickets when you're in the courtyard. Yes, you'll be a true love of mine.
Perfect. I've figured something out.
What is that?
I have figured out how to be, and pardon my expression, a badass.
And, sounds as if you've read the book.
I haven't read the book, but I happened to snag Celia's roller derby helmet. And I just thought that, this would be the sure way to get there. Quick.
Well, I think coming in, I happened to see someone skating along here. I think that's Celia skating in right at this moment.
Whoa! Oh, no. Uh-oh.
Let me get out of the way.
Uh-oh.
Louise, you do not need my helmet to be a badass. You already are a badass.
I am. Well, here you go. Because I already am.
Well, I'm glad you know that. Because we all are born a badass. We go through life actually picking up these fears and obstacles that we just imagine for ourselves. And with this class, you'll be able to learn how to push past them. And that's what it means to be a badass, being connected to source energy and being truly happy. So, what I'm going to do in exchange for my helmet is I'm going to actually pass you this badass button to remind you that you are a badass.
Well, Celia, that's so kind of you. And thank you. And so that's right. If you're interested in pushing this badass button or signing up or buying a book, you can do that in the courtyard with Claire and at the cashier table. And, you know, remember who you are.
You are a badass.
Thank you. Good one. Okay.
Really quick, I did just want to touch on the fact that this class is actually part of my personal initiative to get younger butts in our seats. And so it takes all of us actually sharing this event to really do it. Fun fact, Facebook actually thinks that badass is a bad word, so it makes it harder for us to actually get past the algorithms. So please share the event. One share actually can bring like 3 people, right? You did it. You did. To give it up for Janae right here. She totally brought 3 people from her share. So one share can make the difference, and that's how we get younger people in our doors. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now be careful there, Celia.
Are you going to go flying off? Okay, no. Oh, I need to get me my skates again.
I know. And you know, I had the fire extinguisher here, just in case, because we did train on it this week, and I was really excited. And we have a lot of firepower down here.
Very
So,
good.
Speaking of firepower.
Speaking of firepower, we have the opportunity to be part of our World Relief Community Service Project. It's going to continue throughout the end of July. So you can see information in your bulletin about that. You can be a warm, welcoming presence of relocating those who are coming into our community outside of the United States.
Yeah, be sure to see them at the table in the courtyard. And have you done your affirmations today? Anybody done affirmations today? Or have you stopped doing your affirmations because you think that they don't work? Well, what some people don't understand is if you have a different belief, then affirmations actually won't get you anywhere. So Reverend Deborah Phillips is offering a class coming up. It's called Thought Belief Alignment. And she's going to go through 7 simple steps that if you repeat those, you can change and create these new grooves. So be sure to see her. It's July 29th. Sign up for that. It's a great opportunity.
And we also invite you to save the date. We're going to put together a church directory with our photographs. If you'd like to be part of that, it's going to be on Friday, August the 4th and Saturday the 5th. More information will be coming in the next few weeks, but just keep that in mind as something that we can do to keep a greater connection with one another.
Great. And speaking of connections, we are hosting an evening screening of Being Mortal. It's a docudrama, is that? Yeah. By Dr. Atul Gawande. And we are offering this on Thursday, August 17th from 6:30 to 8:30. Dr. Gawande is a really wonderful being. He traveled the path of his father's illness and realized that there's a lot of work to do in the medical field and in our own personal interaction with the medical field when we have a medical need or we're in the end stages of life. So be sure to come to that evening. It's a great film. It's very uplifting, and there will be a facilitated discussion after that. So join us. It's also being co-hosted by YOLO Hospice.
Also, speaking of other activities, the Heart of the Vision Quest, a mini retreat with Jan Garrett and J.D. Martin, is going to take place Saturday, August the 26th between 1 and 4. It is a wholehearted soul retrieval through centering, mirroring, medicine wheel teaching, created sacred space, and practicing the visioning process through the time-honored traditions, as well as music being woven throughout the experience. So that's going to be on August the 26th, between 1 and 4 p.m.
And right now, we'd love to introduce you to some wonderful people. We've got our ambassadors and our prayer chaplains. Our ambassadors, if you'd stand, and the prayer chaplains. The ambassadors wear that rainbow ribbon, and that is a sign that they are here to greet you and create more of a rainbow in your day. guide you to things you need to find here at SLC. And those prayer chaplains wear the white stoles, and that's a symbol. That's a symbol that they're here to hold all of us in confidential prayer, whether it be for a challenge or a celebration. See them in the back of the sanctuary after service or in the courtyard.
And if you're here for the very first time, we're going to hand a welcome card to you in a moment. It's a great way to get connected with our community, and you can fill out that card and drop it into the offertory basket at the end of the service or at the welcome table in the breezeway. And we have some gifts for you as well. And the welcome table is a place you can connect and learn more about Spiritual Life Center. So if there's anyone here for the very first time, just kind of raise your hand. Any first timers here this morning? Okay, looks like we are all
family.
Returning individuals. Therefore, we're new, as I like to say, because if we're different today than we were yesterday, then, there's a new you. So I just invite you to get up and say, you look new today.
And we invite you to stay standing as we get into our group song.
Well, I just want to say one little thing. Just in time for us to go paperless and not have the words to the group song in the bulletin, we're having a technical issue, and we don't have the words for our screen. But we have total faith in you. You know these words.
That's right, you all know this. There was a time in my life, thought I had to do it all for myself. Didn't know the grace of God was sufficient. Didn't know the love of God was at hand. But now I gotta say, if you feel discouraged, struggling just to make it through another day, you've got to let go, just let it all go. And this is what you have to say: I release, and I let go. I let the Spirit run. And my heart is open wide. And my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. Only here. No more struggle, no more strife. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. My faith, I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here. I'm only here for God. The Spirit run. And my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. My heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith, I see the light. I am free Please be seated.
Yes, free in the spirit, only here for God. So I invite you now to settle in. We're going to prepare for our meditation, and we're going to read together with great freedom and soul our vision statement. Spiritual Life Center is a loving, vibrant family that welcomes home all people and accepts everyone, no exceptions, weaving ancient spiritual traditions with emerging wisdom. We cultivate a spiritual deepening with the divine, each other, and our planet.
In preparation for meditation, I invite you to take a deep breath and settle into your chair. Let freedom ring in my soul. Let freedom ring. Together. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring in my soul. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring in my soul. Let freedom ring. I am free. I am free to be a voice. I am free to make a choice. I am free here to be just who I am. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring in my soul. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring in my soul. Let freedom ring. I am free. I am free to be a voice. I am free. I am free to make a choice. I am free. I am free here to be just who I am. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring. Let freedom ring in my soul. Let freedom ring.
As we move into this time of meditation, let's breathe together. Breathing in and breathing out. With each breath, relaxing. Relaxing our bodies. With each breath, relaxing our mind. Let freedom ring in my soul. I am free, here to be just who I am. Breathe that in, deep into your belly. I am free, here to be just who I am. And who you are is so much more than this physical body. You are a child of the living God. Love incarnate. And this love is fully present in every moment, right here, right now. In this very moment, the love of your Creator, the love of your God, is pouring in to all of humanity. Breathe that in, deep into your bones, into every cell of your being. Open to receive that love. On this Independence Day weekend, we honor the land of the free. America is considered the melting pot of the world. We are a beautiful mixture of colors and cultures and faiths, a rich fabric of diversity. And we celebrate that diversity with deep gratitude. Thank you, God, for the consciousness and the vision of our forefathers, those who held the belief in the freedom to choose. 241 years after our formal independence, we join together in this sweet sanctuary, surrounded by our spiritual family, worshiping you, God, in a way that our forefathers dreamed about. Their divine idea has manifested here, and in such a beautiful way. And we honor that freedom to worship, that freedom to be for all. As children, many of us learned the Pledge of Allegiance. We said very meaningful words as we honored our flag, our country. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One nation, under God, one God, worshipped in many ways, indivisible, incapable of being divided. No matter how divided we appear, we're indivisible, one, with liberty and justice for all, not for some, not for many. Liberty and justice for all. And that's what we celebrate this week. Our independence and our freedom, our oneness for all. True freedom is knowing this oneness, experiencing the love of our being. May we all be free. As we move into the silence, simply rest in the freedom of your Creator. Rest in your God. Thank you, God. As we go forth, may we know your presence more fully. Let freedom ring. Thank you, God. Amen.
Hang on to the world as it spins around. Just don't let the spin get you down.
Things are moving so fast. Hold on tight and you will last.
Keep your self-respect,
Self-respect.
your inner pride. Get to yourself and give. Keep your stride.
Never mind your fears. Brighter days will soon be here. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Keep on walking tall.
Hold your head up high.
Lay your dreams right up
To the sky.
to the sky. Sing your greatest song, and you'll keep growing, you'll keep going on. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free.
Hey,
Just wait and see, someday we'll all be free.
said it won't be long, no.
Won't be long, take it from me, someday we'll all be free.
said I believe we'll all be free.
Someday we'll know.
Someday is today. We're all free.
Freedom.
Take it from me. We'll all be free.
Hey, hey.
We'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free.
We'll all be free.
You and me together as one. We're all free.
We're all free. We're all free. We're all free. We're all free. Someday we'll all be free. Yeah. Someday we'll all be free. Today we're all free.
Come on.
Today we're all free.
Take it from me. Come on, take it from me. You must believe this is the land of freedom. You and me, we can live together as one, as we say we're all free. You and me, we're all free. One more time, say today, said we're all free. Today, we're all free.
All righty then. Oh, yeah. I think we're free now because we're here for our appointment with God. Just going to bask and thank you, Ann and LaJean and the band. I was thinking about what to share, and I was watching a movie recently. It was the modern version of the movie Birth of a Nation. And it was done by a young director, producer, writer, Nat Parker, and another gentleman. And the theme of the movie was the rebellion of the time of the slave Nat Turner. And the movie opens up with a ritual of the elders. And they brought Nat Turner in as he was a young boy. And they had identified him as being someone special. He had a special marking on his chest that he was born with that distinguished him from all the others. They saw it as a mark from God. And during the ritual, the chief pointed out that this young man, he was considered a prophet. He was considered wise. He was considered a leader. He was courageous, and that he was given a title that would last his entire lifetime. And one of the things that he said could never be taken away from him was that he was a child of God. And because of all the other qualities that he presented, that the others around him should listen to him. And eventually, he became a preacher. He was able to learn to read, which was very rare for, someone in bondage during that time. And as I was watching the movie and seeing that ritual, it was reminding me that there is always a part of us that we may call the God self. a part of us that is changeless, a part of us that is always here, no matter what we may be going through in the outer. We may be in bondage in the outer in some way, shape, or form. But there's a divine part of us that's never been hurt, never been harmed, never been endangered in any way. And it's always present. It is always free. And if we begin to live from that, if we begin to act from that, if we begin to speak from that presence, if we begin to speak and act from that space as Nat Turner did in that movie, then freedom is always present for us, even if we're physically in bondage. So today I'm talking about the topic, Godlines to Spiritual Liberation. At first I was going to call it guidelines. But then this idea came, Godlines. Oh, Godlines, I like that. Now, what does that really mean? You know, there's a scriptural reference that we're all familiar with that comes from the Gospel of John. It says, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And I believe all of nature and all of God is conspiring for the freedom of the individual in order that it may unloose its own energy through us. In other words, all the nature of God, all of the universe is conspiring for our spiritual freedom so that it may be expressed through us. And so we're here to explore this dynamic thing called freedom or spiritual liberation, understanding that oftentimes we hear people talking about freedom of choice, that we have freedom of choice. And I said, well, maybe we do and maybe we don't. Because choice is a function of our awareness. And if we're not aware, we never can choose. We're merely reacting to the external circumstances that are always changing around us. I remember when I was in college, I had a classmate that was in my class. And it kind of reminded me, when I was a young kid, my family used to send us down down south during the summertime. That was a big deal. And, you know, we learned, and, you know, we were like more like city-ish type folks, and we learned to, you know, milk cows. I wasn't very good at it. You know, and to get up early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, you know, they would all pick all kinds of breakfast and, you know, tend to the chickens and, you know, feed. I mean, it was like, this was different for me. But I remember there was a few people around who were not very enlightened. And they had a few of us that they called us names. And, you know, I won't repeat some of those things. And, you know, we were in the deep South during that time. That had to be, you know, in the 60s. And when I fast forward, there was a time that I had a classmate that for some reason I looked at him and he reminded me of some of those folks who were not very enlightened. You know, he had a southern accent. You know, he dressed a certain way, talked a certain way. You know, he drove a pickup truck. So I had my interpretation of what he was based upon something that was in my mind. But it just so happens I had to get to know him because he was in my class. It was small groups. And over time, I began to see him differently. And I realized ultimately he was cool. You know, he actually helped me a lot during the time that I was in college, during the times there, because he was brilliant. You know, I used to take this course called Economic Statistics, which was like really hard. And, you know, I might be in there working on something for like hours and hours and hours. And like in between class, he'd have the book walking around and, okay, let me read this. And so he'd like do all his homework like in the 20 minutes between class. And so I used to have him as my personal tutor, but he was a great guy. But I realized that because somewhere on the level I had put myself into a box. I had limited my ability to see freely based upon a preconceived concept I had of him, and I was not free. I was not thinking freely. Sometimes in our own life experiences, we live from our past. Sometimes we live from past hurts, past shames, past denials. And we bring those things into the present moment, and we're reacting to things in the world that have nothing to do with how things really are. And we think we're free. You know, when we live that way, we often end up regurgitating what always has been, rather than exercising true freedom of choice to explore new possibilities, new limit possibilities that the universe has in store for us. You know, there was there's a Zen story about a bird that had gotten tangled up in some wires and had gotten free. And the bird began to fly, into the sky, and every once in a while would catch insects for its lunch, and it swam in the summer rain trickles, and, it was like many of the other birds. But this particular bird had a habit. Every time an event occurred in the bird's life that was bad, or a bad memory came up, it would pick up a stone from the ground. And every day the bird sorted out the stones and remembered and cried about those sad moments. And the bird always took those stones with her and was flying in the sky, and she never forgot those bad moments because she had those stones with her. And years had passed, and the bird had gotten a lot of stones, accumulated a huge number of them, and was sorting through them, looking at all the negative things that happened in its life, remembering its past. And one day it became more and more difficult for it to fly because it had a whole bunch of stones it could I don't know how a bird handles stones, but it's only a story. And the bird had been free all this time, but after a while it couldn't walk the earth anymore. It was unable to move on its own. It couldn't catch any more insects anymore, and eventually the bird died of starvation and thirst. And the only thing that was in memory of that bird was all the stones it had accumulated that reminded her of all the times past. Holding on to the past sometimes limits us to what we can do in the here and the now, bringing them into the present moment. There's a statement from one scriptural reference that what is was and what was will be, that God requireth our past. Speaking about an eternal truth that, without the power, the presence, and love of God active in our consciousness right here and now, we're often doomed to repeat our past over and over again, and we're not spiritually free. Emily Cady, who is the author of Lessons in Truth, the fundamental textbook I talk about, New Thought, writes in her chapter, Bondage or Liberty Which? He said, every person must learn to stand alone with his or her God. Nothing else avails. And when we're with our God in the moment, in the nowness of this moment, we are always free. That's the power of, taking the cue process. We recognize what we're reacting to, and then we can begin to release that, tell ourselves a different story so that we can be fully in this moment. Because if we're not in the present, if without the presence of God, as I like to say, what lies ahead to us is history. And without God, what lies ahead is what has already been experienced in our life. Unless we break our thinking, break our awareness, unless there's a new insight, our future is exactly what the past has been. There's a story that I sometimes share because it's, 4th of July. There was a revolutionary that was on the lookout for all the British who were going to come and capture them and take over them, and he'd been looking out for them. And finally, they started coming, and he had a plan. They said when they came, he was going to get out and just get on his horse, ride down to the lake, get into his rowboat, and just start rowing away. And so the British were coming to get him, and so he followed his plan, and he got to his boat, and he began to row. And he rowed, 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 and he was rowing all night long. And he woke up, the next morning after being exhausted, and he looked around, and he noticed that he was still in the same spot that he was the night before. And the reason was he forgot to untie the rope from the dock. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to release our ties to the past in order to be into this present moment. You understand, our universe is progressive. It's always seeking to evolve ourselves and get us better and better and better. You know, Eckhart Tolle said something to the effect that the past has no power to stop you from being in the present now. Only your grievance about the past can do that. You know, there was a woman who was kidnapped in early 2000s and eventually became a correspondent on ABC News. But early, when she was about 14 years old, she was abducted. And the man who abducted her had held her for 9 months and hit her and subjected her to cruelty every single day. And when she was in her new position, she said that what she was going to do, she was going to focus on looking ahead and not looking back on her own story. And as I was thinking about that, I realized that she was not going to let her story define her life. She said that people have done that, and they let those traumatic experiences run them. She said she didn't want to wake up every day bitter and guarded. She didn't want to become one who identified as a victim, where she rehashed what happened over and over again. And she said when you focus on bad things you've been through, it's nearly impossible to recognize when you're going through something good. It's even more challenging to create something good with what you have because you're not truly free. I think if we're not willing to progress by choice, stagnation becomes our experience, and discord and jealousy and envy and sense of separation that leads to pain. And pain is an effort that it takes to hold on to an old thought form. That's all that pain is, holding on to an old thought form. There was an experience that I think a gentleman had who was convicted of a crime that he did not commit. And he had been in prison for like 17 years. And he came out of the prison, but he was joyous and happy. And he was being interviewed, and they asked him, well, how is it that you were wrongly convicted and you seem to be so carefree? You have been wrongly imprisoned for 17 years. And he said, no, I was only in prison for 3 years. You see, for the first 3 years, I was bitter, I was angry, I was upset, I was unforgiving, I was holding a grudge, had a lot of negative energy. And he said that at some point I had to realize that I wasn't going to get out. And I had to ask myself, what do I need to do within myself to create my own freedom? And he said I had to ask myself, what within me was I harboring in my own consciousness that was creating a sense of bondage, creating a sense of separation, creating a sense that I was not being free. And he began to work on himself and began to practice forgiveness, began to practice letting go. And something happened where he had a revelation. And in that revelation, he began to see new possibilities where he could exercise his freedom of choice despite the fact that he was indeed bondage physically. And he began to help out all of the other inmates in time while he was in there and helping them become more aware of their spiritual nature. And so when he came out, he said he was free. And he couldn't understand why everybody outside of the jail seemed to be like imprisoned all the time, how they were living. He took an inward journey. You know, many times people look back and they're constantly regurgitating, their childhood experiences, and they store them up. They may be not getting beyond them. They're not processing them properly. They're not becoming healed of them. And they latch on to them and they kind of use them in case their life is not working for them in the way that they'd like. But as I understand about life, we don't ever want to complain about our past. Because I always realize that complaining is the inability to see God. Because if we complain about our past, it could become our future. We might be saying in some way, let me tell you about my past. This is what I'm telling you about my future. Let me tell you about my past. Let me tell you, this is what my future is about. But we look past our past, to learn from it. We use it as a stepping stone and not a tombstone, a stepping stone to move us to be in alignment with God's intention for our life. It helps us augment this alignment. One of the things that we must always do is practice forgiveness. I think Jesus was big on forgiveness. I always thought he taught two things. Number one, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And number two, the power of letting go, releasing, and forgiveness, the process. He said 70 times 7 we must forgive others. And he wasn't talking about counting 70 times 7 times, because I imagine that time people couldn't count up that high. Well, some people could. But the whole idea is a process. We never let it go. You know, Gary Zukav, who we're going to study his book, Seed of the Soul, had these words to say about forgiveness. He said, an authentically empowered person is one who forgives. He said, forgiveness is not a moral issue. It is an energy dynamic. Forgiveness means we no longer carry the baggage or the energy of an experience. And when we carry that baggage, we've stepped out of being free, because the past is directing our decision making. You know, forgiveness is never for anybody else. It's always for us. It's always for us. You know, it's like someone I remember that they had a very unforgiving energy toward a person for like 10 years. And they finally went to the person to offer their forgiveness, and the other person didn't even remember who they were. They didn't even know who they were. Who are you? They did it to themselves. Well, you know, we're celebrating the independence that began with the American Revolution here in the United States. Of course, that was a two-part phenomenon. It was separating from England and then birthing what would be the contribution in terms of founding a country, a new birth. I think in our own lives, we're here to birth something new. You know, there's a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in the country. And we can be holding on to that past or how things are, but as Thomas Jefferson said, what we want to do is go back to first principle, go back to the presence of God, reconnect with that presence so that we can truly have freedom. You know, I think the things that we realize, at least I realize about the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, you know, that many of those who were back there didn't live up to the ideals of what that represented. But what they did present us a blueprint of what those ideals are, and said to us who come after that, here's the blueprint. Go forth and make it happen. You know, we had a lot of things happen over the history of the United States as I looked at that Birth of a Nation movie, which is intense. You know, it was a very intense movie. I could hardly watch it at times. And as Thomas Jefferson said something to the effect that he trembles for America because he trembles that, you know, that justice is always going to come back. And as a result, we had a lot of breakdowns that took place as a result of the Civil War. But I think we always have the chance to change that around, to transform that with the teachings that we're part of today. The teachings that of the ages, that's part of the body of thought that's called the mature teachings. That part of the population that realizes that it is us who must change and not the world. It's us who must change and not the government. It's us, we who must change. And as we weave ourselves into the fabric of the world, being in the world and not of it, in this community, this country, this world is transformed. When we become willing to be that change, which is a choice that we all have, to grow from God's glory to greater glory, we become agents of transformation, and the very planet and the very country in which we live can be transformed. Because as we change, as we grow, as we expand, as we identify with our true nature and being and activate that which is within us, we become the vanguard of the very society in which we are living. But the choice is ours, and we have that freedom of choice. America and the world is calling for you and me to grow into our true nature and being as expressions of God. God needs us to grow into that, to live this world, to live this nation the way it began. You know, it states on our money, in God we trust. We know that's in God that we live and we move and we have our very beingness in, is where our freedom truly is. And as we know, when we know the truth of who and what we are and live that, we are free. We are free. I think that's it for the 4th of July weekend. So it is. And as our musicians come forward, we prepare for our gifts and love offerings. And we freely give. And we understand the principle behind the giving. It comes back to us in ways we never imagined before. We support this community. We support those organizations outside the community to help bring forth a world that God sees when we're at our highest and our best. And so with that awareness and that consciousness, let's say our offertory blessing. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
Before we sing our last song, I want to just say two things. One is I wanted to mention that Soul Light Connection is going to be opening an event on the 4th of July at Southside Park. I was mentioning it last week. It's called Interdependence Day. And we will do a half-an-hour set to kick off the event. There will be community leaders. There'll be activities, sand mandala, dance, food, and an inspiring day to start. And you can be there and back to your barbecues before you even know it. 10 o'clock a.m. at Southside Park. Soul Light Connection does a half-an-hour set. And I would like to tell you that this song that we're going to do right now was written by our dear friend J.D. Martin, who will be here in August. On the 26th and 27th.
Feel free, hallelujah, feel free, more power to you, feel free. Whatever you do, you know you can't get it wrong for long. Feel free to keep on moving. Feel free to find your groove, 'cause you are the life of the party. Feel free.
If you're lonely,
Feel free to make yourself at home, and in the middle of a crowd, feel free to be alone. Whatever you need, relax. Don't get yourself bogged down in the fast. Feel free, hallelujah. Feel free, more power to you. Feel free, whatever you do, you know you can't get it wrong for long. Feel free to keep on moving. Feel free to find your groove, 'cause you are the life of the party. Feel free. There's a wide world waiting, so feel free to help yourself. And if you get stuck, it's alright to try something else. In the middle of a crisis, try this. One breath at a time, and you can't miss.
oh no.
Feel free, hallelujah. Feel free, more power to you. Feel free, whatever you do, you know you can't get it wrong for long. Feel free to keep on moving. Feel free to find your groove, 'cause you are the life of the party. Feel free.
Come on, John. No need to be hand cranking the universe.
Hey.
We got special angels
feel free. Whatever you do, you know you can't get it wrong for long. Feel free to keep on moving. Feel free to find your groove, 'cause you are the life of the party. Feel free, hallelujah. Feel free, more power to you. Feel free, whatever you do, you know can't get it wrong, can't get it wrong. Keep on moving. Feel free to find your groove, 'cause you are the life of the party. Feel free, hallelujah. You are the life of the party. Feel free.
Free, feel free. We are free. We're free because we're children of God. What more need to be said? Though we bless them, tithes and offerings, knowing that are blessed the givers and receivers at all levels of their being. As each of us go forth expressing that freedom that we have when we're aware of who and what we are in the presence and the power and the love of God. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. And with that, let's sing our peace song. Expanded prayer for protection.